At the highest level of the Israeli government, something is not adding up. Curious. During one of the most consequential security sessions of this entire conflict, a war cabinet meeting called specifically to coordinate Israel's response to the latest Iranian strikes, the Prime Minister was nowhere to be found. Surprised. The Defense Minister stepped in, formally noted the absence, and ran the meeting himself. To understand why this matters, consider the context. This was not a scheduled policy review or a routine intelligence update. This was a live, wartime decision-making session at a moment of peak military pressure, and the head of government was absent, with no explanation offered to the public. The confirmation came from Israeli sources, not from Tehran, not from opposition figures. The Times of Israel, a publication with direct access to security cabinet protocols, characterized the situation as historically out of the ordinary. Israeli prime ministers do not skip these sessions during active conflict. The entire institutional logic of those meetings assumes the top of the chain of command is in the room. So let us be precise about what the evidence actually supports. What is not in dispute? The prime minister missed the meeting. His absence was formally noted. The defense minister assumed control. No official reason was given. What remains unresolved? Why? Iranian state channels and IRGC-affiliated media immediately advanced a narrative suggesting Israeli leadership had been struck. Regional outlets, Pakistani, Chinese, Russian, Turkish, carried versions of the same reporting. Western media maintained that Netanyahu was alive, citing an unspecified operational reason for his absence, without elaborating further. What is confirmed but lacks a full explanation. An Indian journalist employed by a major news organization was arrested following a live broadcast. Multiple Gulf and regional outlets corroborated the arrest. According to the reporting, the journalist had been transmitting from a location where the Prime Minister was physically present and had identified him on camera during a live feed. A strike was subsequently reported in that vicinity. Israeli authorities arrested the journalist on national security grounds. The arrest is not disputed. The chain of events connecting the broadcast to what followed remains contested. What the pattern of behavior tells us: a functioning head of state, in full command during the most intense phase of his country's most significant military conflict in a generation, does not disappear from public view for 48 hours without a documented, verifiable appearance. Netanyahu's entire political history points in the opposite direction. Every previous escalation, Gaza operations, the 12-day war, every prior security crisis, produced immediate, repeated, high-visibility appearances. Podiums, press conferences, war room backdrops, statements projecting personal command. The gap between that established pattern and the current silence is an analytical signal in itself. The government eventually released footage, a brief clip from an undisclosed location, partially obscured, then a second clip, apparently filmed in a cafe environment. Both were met with immediate and widespread scrutiny online. Visual inconsistencies flagged by numerous observers prompted independent fact-checkers to weigh in. Official explanations pointed to compression artifacts and optical distortions. The fact-checkers determined the footage was authentic. But the more useful question is not about pixels. It is about logic. Why is a wartime leader of a country with some of the most advanced communications infrastructure on the planet conveying his status to the world through informal cafe footage? Every precedent from his own career points to a different choice. The deviation from that precedent does not require a conspiratorial explanation to be worth noting. It is a pattern break, and pattern breaks in wartime carry analytical weight. While all of this was unfolding, the military situation crossed a new threshold. Iran announced the 54th wave of what it has designated Operation True Promise 4. This wave differed from its predecessors in a specific and significant way. For the first time in the conflict, Tehran committed ultra-heavy missile systems against targets it described as Israeli command and decision-making infrastructure. The weapons deployed included a missile carrying a 2-ton conventional warhead, the largest in Iran's operational inventory, and the Sigil, a solid-fuel ballistic missile making its confirmed combat debut in this conflict. The Sigil's significance is technical and strategic simultaneously. Liquid-fueled missiles require a preparation window before launch, a window that satellite systems can detect. Solid-fuel systems carry no such vulnerability. They can be launched within minutes of a decision with no visible pre-launch signature. They are harder to anticipate, faster to deploy, and their operational range covers every significant American and Israeli military installation across the region. Committing this system to combat is not a routine escalation. It reflects a deliberate decision to bring a higher-tier capability into play. The targeting logic behind striking command and coordination infrastructure deserves its own examination. Destroying military hardware degrades capacity. Destroying the systems through which military decisions are made, transmitted, and executed degrades coherence. The second approach is harder to photograph, harder to quantify, and harder to recover from. Iran appears to be pursuing both tracks, with increasing emphasis on the second. At the same time, Hezbollah opened a coordinated northern front from Lebanon. What Israeli military analysts noted, and what Israeli press reported, was that the operational coordination demonstrated that night did not match the public narrative of a Hezbollah rendered functionally ineffective by months of Israeli air campaigns. The timing, the target selection, the synchronization with the Iranian wave, these reflected an organization with intact command and control, not a degraded one. The official characterization did not survive contact with the observable evidence. The combined picture, ultra-heavy missiles against command infrastructure, a coordinated multi-front assault, the Sigil's combat debut, and an Israeli prime minister absent from the room where the response was being planned, is the kind of convergence that professional analysts and defense planners will be examining very carefully. The economic dimension of this conflict reaches every person watching, regardless of geographic distance from the fighting. Israel's war is currently consuming an estimated $3 billion per week in direct economic losses. American operational costs are running at approximately $1 billion per day. Combined, that is roughly $10 billion per week being absorbed by a conflict for which neither side has publicly defined an acceptable endpoint. During this period, public-facing oil price data froze for approximately 2 days. The crude market does not close at night. Continuous pricing is the norm. A freeze in publicly displayed price data during an active conflict that has shut the Strait of Hormuz, struck Gulf energy infrastructure, destroyed a major international airport, and eliminated commercial shipping from the region's primary waterway, is not a routine technical event. It is an indication that something in the market information architecture required active management. Israel's state of emergency has been extended through the end of March. That legal framework carries real consequences. Reduced civilian oversight, expanded executive authority, and a compressed space for institutional accountability. Domestic polling inside Israel shows rising opposition to the government's handling of the conflict. Emergency frameworks do not only serve genuine security functions, they also provide political insulation at moments when public scrutiny would otherwise intensify. The civilian reality underneath the strategic analysis is the part that will ultimately shape this region's trajectory more than any battlefield development. Israeli civilians have spent weeks cycling between homes and shelters. Schools are closed. Businesses are closed. The country's only international airport has sustained direct strikes. The northern border communities are under a form of sustained pressure that the Israeli military has acknowledged by restricting its own soldiers from patrolling certain areas near the Lebanese border, not because those areas are occupied, but because the threat environment makes guaranteeing their safety impossible. Hezbollah's stated objective has never been to seize Israeli territory through conventional invasion. It has been to make certain areas functionally uninhabitable through sustained attrition, to raise the cost of remaining until the calculation shifts. That process is advancing not because of dramatic battlefield breakthroughs, but through the quiet accumulation of disrupted routines, closed schools, and the persistent question of whether normal life is coming back. Israel's strategic deterrence framework rested on two pillars: the demonstrated ability to defend against attack, and the credible threat that the cost of attacking would be prohibitive. On the night in question, 31 Iron Dome interceptors were fired at Ben Gurion and stopped nothing. Ultra-heavy missiles struck command infrastructure in central Israel for the first time. A northern front demonstrated coordination that official communications had described as no longer possible. And the Prime Minister was absent from the meeting where the response to all of it was being decided. Deterrence is not a function of hardware alone. It is a function of perception. Specifically, the adversary's ongoing calculation that the cost of action exceeds the potential gain. Every actor in this region is now updating that calculation based on what they observed. The question underneath all of this remains the same one it has been since the operation began. What does this conflict look like when both sides have concluded that the cost of not escalating is higher than the cost of escalating further? Iran has deployed its heaviest missiles. It has coordinated a multi-front operation. It has closed the strait, struck the airport, hit Gulf infrastructure, and issued ceasefire conditions that no professional analyst describes as politically acceptable to Washington. Israel has conducted hundreds of strikes against Iranian military targets, nuclear infrastructure, and command facilities, and is absorbing losses that official communications have consistently characterized differently from what the operational record documents. Neither side has announced what an acceptable end looks like. Neither side has stated what conditions would bring this to a close. And the man who made the decision to launch this conflict on February 28th has not made a confirmed, documented public appearance in 48 hours.